Where did you go? It was dangerous. Mother was yelling at her son. Get away from the guy, Jane. He did the right thing as he should. I'm proud of you, son, said the father. Jane wanted to say something else but didn't. They don't understand. Jackson was an ordinary boy. He was born late, mainly because Jane and George met each other when both were already 35 years old. Why this happened wasn't clear, but George liked to repeat that it was fate and fate destined them for each other. So they had to wait, and the son also had to wait. Jane even ran to the doctors a little, but as a result, the long-awaited pregnancy came and there was no end of happiness for the spouses. The boy grew up smart, he didn't disappoint his parents, he obeyed and didn't vandalize. He was interested in science, however, and in sports too. He went to the wrestling section. Little Jackson insisted on it. He argued that a man in any case needed combat fighting skills for self-defense. Otherwise what? He will grow up to be squishy. He won't even be able to stand up for himself, not even for his family, George used to say. Don't badmouth, Jane smiled, looking lovingly at her both men. What a squishy boy, no one! Look what a prominent guy is growing. All on you, such a broad-shouldered, tall man. If he sits on his ass, the whole shape will be lost. George grumbled. He was worried that Jane would spoil her son. He wanted just to grow a real man out of him. The family lived in a small village. Several houses were tool stores and the rest were private houses with vegetable gardens and sheds. One day, Jackson was walking past a private house. He was returning from wrestling. The coach praised him again today, and Jackson wanted to tell his father about it. He felt completely grown up and realized that he had something to be proud of. The lessons were not in vain. He participated in competition, won prizes. In addition, he recently turned 14 and received a passport. Jackson dreamed of getting a job in summer to help his parents. Help! A sharp female cry brought the guy out of his thoughts. Then he heard thumps. Then woman's cry again. Without hesitation for a second, the guy rushed to help. The scream came from the nearest house he was walking past. Jackson easily jumped over a flimsy wooden fence and in 3 jumps was at the entrance to the house. He pulled the door. It was of course closed. He listened and heard a muffled male voice. The woman wasn't hurt, but then it seemed he heard sobs. The guy circled the house, wrapping a jacket around his arm, smashed the window pane and jumped into the room. There was a woman tied to a chair with her mouth taped shut sitting in the middle of the room. She no longer resisted, but with her eyes widened in horror, she looked at the terrible-looking man who, holding a knife in one hand, poured her with a pungent-smelling liquid from a small canister. Gasoline, Jackson gasped, twitching his nose. The man looked completely insane. He was in dirty pants and a t-shirt, all disheveled and with a glazed look. Empty bottles lay on the floor. You bastard, selling creature, and I'm a fool. I wormed the snake on my chest. No wonder people told me. What are you doing? The boy ran up to the man. However, having already heard the sound of glass, the crazy man dropped the knife and canister and rushed to run. Jackson sank down on the sofa, exhausted, and began to dial a number on his phone, calling the police and an ambulance at the same time. His legs were trembling and hands too. Sweat trickled down his forehead. He carefully removed the tape from the woman's face and gave her water, bringing it from the kitchen. Then he carefully untied the woman. Thank you, she said in a weak voice. There was no need for an ambulance. I'm fine. You saved me. The guy shrugged and chuckled. He was still shaking. We need to get out of this room. There is a strong smell here. I turned off the gas in the kitchen just in case, he said in a trembling voice. At home, his mother threw a tantrum. Why did you go there? He could catch you first. Apparently, he didn't care anymore. He was out of his mind. Mom, I couldn't pass by. the son stubbornly repeated. And it would be better to pass. You're only one for us. I can't imagine what I would do if you were killed. What kind of house is it? What kind of a man? I don't know anyone there. Robinson family used to live there. Then when they were gone, the children sold the house, in my opinion, but I don't know who bought it. Jane muttered in confusion. What's the noise? The father returned from work and found Jackson and his wife drooping and crying in the kitchen. Jane, washing herself with tears, told him about what happened that day with her son. He did the right thing, Jane. If I knew that my son passed by someone else's misfortune, I would be very upset, and now I'm proud of him. The long day was over, but the parents sitting in the kitchen until the very night discussed what happened. Jane couldn't convey her concerns to her husband. She was worried. Jackson had already been interviewed by the police. The next day, instead of going to school, he needed to come back to the police department. At the moment, he was sleeping peacefully in his room. The next day, while Jackson was at the police station, the district police officer came to his parents' house. Your son is a hero, he immediately said to Jane. He was instructed to go to the guy's house, talk to his parents, check what kind of family raised the hero. The district police officer guessed that most likely the guy would be awarded. That crazy drunk man almost killed a woman. It was the unfortunate woman's husband. The only pity was that his mind was damaged and he wouldn't receive a full punishment, and so he wouldn't be in jail. Jane just sighed and wiped away her tears with the tip of a kitchen towel. She was also proud of her son, but she became scared at the mere thought that madman could easily kill Jackson without even realizing what he was doing. The school day went on. Children ran along the long hall. The girls were standing in the corner and whispering about something. Mrs. Martinez, a cleaning lady, grumbled as she wiped a bottle of water near the entrance to the classroom. One of the children dropped a disposable glass of water, which he poured from the cooler to drink. The bell rang. So, children, let's start the lesson, said the teacher. My name is Mrs. Torres. I will teach English language and literature instead of Mrs. Young. Jackson? The teacher broke off. Right at the first desk, her little hero was sitting and looking at her. If not him. It was even scary to think about it. Mrs. Torres staggered and she had to sit down at the table so as not to fall. She was still reeling from the terrible memories. She and her husband were forced to sell an apartment in the city and leave for this village. There was no money at all. The teacher's salary wasn't big, and her husband, Antonio, regularly went on a drinking binge and in the end drank everything he could and even got into debt. Debts, thanks to the sale of the apartment, were paid off. The husband fell to the knees, tore his shirt, promised that he would stop drinking. Mrs. Torres believed him. Last time, he indeed became completely different while he was sober. It was like two different people lived inside him. But then, as if a demon possessed him, he spoke utter nonsense, but never raised his hand to her. But then, suddenly Antonio tied her up, threatening with a knife. He shouted that she ruined his whole life, that they had sold that apartment for nothing, that there was a treasure hidden under his floor, and because of her, it was gone now. Or maybe not gone, maybe she took it, and now she would answer for it. The husband was screaming and flashing with crazy eyes, brandishing a knife, and then he brought a canister from the shed and began to dose Mrs. Torres with gasoline, saying that he wanted to burn her and that it will be his revenge for ruined life and stolen money. Then he sealed her mouth with tape because poor woman tried to call for help. At the moment, she realized that she was doomed, and then Jackson appeared. The boy was sitting silently at his desk. He copied from the textbook the exercise the teacher asked, underlining the necessary words with a special pen. Mrs. Torres furtively was watching him, sitting at the teacher's table and brushing away the running tears. The woman admired him very much. He was a very humble guy, as befits a real hero. Thank you.